They say the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But in Willow Creek Hills, it was manicured lawns, overpriced roses, and a $5,000 fine for grass that grew just over regulation height. That was the day everything changed. I came home that Thursday afternoon exhausted, my eyes bloodshot from 12 straight hours watching prescription pills change hands in the back alleys of Fresno. I was undercover, embedded so deep that I'd forgotten what daylight felt like. The neighborhood of Willow Creek Hills was supposed to be a quiet, well-controlled slice of California paradise, the kind of place where residents sipped coffee at sunrise and argued over bird feeders, not black market pharmaceuticals. But instead of the peace I expected, I found a bright yellow violation notice plastered to my front door like a neon threat. Grass height, 2.1 inches HOA maximum, 1.5. Fine, $5,000. Daily penalty, $500, until resolved. I stared at it in disbelief. Sweat, still clinging to the inside of my Kevlar vest. $5,000 for grass. And that wasn't even the crazy part. My name is Ryan Cole, or at least that's what my badge says. The neighbors knew me as Ryan Carter, the new guy in Unit 46. Allegedly an out-of-work IT contractor with a murky past and a spotty resume, trying to get his life back on track after a few bad choices in his youth. That persona was carefully designed to blend in, to make me just suspicious enough to be noticed, but not dangerous enough to be feared. And it worked, until it didn't. What the HOA president didn't know, or rather, what she thought she knew was going to change everything. Because under that sealed juvenile record she dug up, beneath the mugshot of a scrawny 19-year-old punk with a dime bag in his hoodie, was a decorated detective from the LAPD Narcotics Division on an active undercover assignment. Her name was Sharon Whitmore. Age 48, retired nurse, HOA president, and an absolute menace with a clipboard. I had only been in the community for 2 weeks before I saw her peering at me through lace curtains, binoculars in one hand, HOA violation book in the other. Her house was directly across the cul-de-sac trimmed hedges, zero weeds, American flag perfectly centered on the porch beam. The way she watched people, it wasn't neighborly. It was clinical, cold, like she was measuring vital signs before making a diagnosis. Her favorite activity seemed to be hunting for rule breakers. Trash bins rolled out too early, solar lights placed at an unapproved angle, or in my case, grass that grew recklessly during a 3-day rainstorm. But something about Sharon's vigilance went beyond civic duty. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was calculating, and she had noticed me right away. I knew she was digging. My routine was too inconsistent for a guy claiming to be between gigs. I'd leave the house at 4 a.m. and return near midnight. My windows sometimes flickered with the glow of multiple screens. I wore black all the time. I didn't wave back when waved at. But more than anything, I kept to myself. And to someone like Sharon, someone obsessed with control, that made me a target. And I didn't mind that at first. It actually helped my cover. Because the truth is, I wasn't just playing house. I was there on orders. Over the past 8 months, prescription pills had been vanishing from elderly patients across 3 counties. Heart meds, diabetes, insulin, blood thinners, all gone. No forced entry, no evidence, just vanished. Meanwhile, stolen medications were flooding the online black market, often reappearing in the same regions where they were stolen. All the clues pointed to an inside job, someone posing as a caretaker, a friend, a helper, someone residents trusted. And that led us here. Willow Creek Hills, a sleepy little neighborhood with 200 homes, most of them owned by retirees on fixed incomes and heavy medication regimens. The perfect target. And Sharon Whitmore? Well, she'd been flagged by more than one anonymous report. Helpful, organized, medically trained. She claimed to help older neighbors manage their medications, reviewing labels, tossing out expired prescriptions, connecting them with cheaper alternatives. No one had any reason to question her. Not yet, but I was about to. At first, I thought she was just another overzealous HOA tyrant with too much time and not enough perspective. But then I saw her do something small that made every instinct in me scream. And that yellow violation on my door, that was just her opening move. The day after the grass fine, I received a second violation in my mailbox, this time for unauthorized vehicle placement. My sedan, parked neatly in my own driveway, was apparently detracting from the community's visual harmony. A $1,500 infraction for owning a car that wasn't beige enough. It was laughable almost. Until the third citation arrived, 24 hours later. Refused bin exposure, another $1,000 fine because my trash cans were visible from the street for exactly 15 minutes before pickup. This wasn't about community standards anymore. This was warfare. Sharon Whitmore had declared me an enemy of the neighborhood, and like any cold-blooded tactician, she was coming for me with every tool at her disposal. And make no mistake, HOA regulations were weapons in her hands. Precision-guided missiles of suburban control, launched with a smile and signed in cursive blue ink. She was testing me, poking the fence, looking for weaknesses. And I was playing along. For now, inside my rental unit, past the dying grass and hostile mail, my real work had begun. I had turned the guest bedroom into a full surveillance hub. Motion-activated cams, thermal readers, wireless mics. I wasn't watching the neighborhood, I was watching one house in particular, Sharon's. From my second-story vantage point, I had a clear line of sight into her front yard and, more importantly, into her comings and goings. She had a pattern: out by 10 a.m., back by noon, a white tote bag slung over her shoulder like a nurse doing rounds. But she wasn't on anyone's payroll. Sharon was no longer licensed. Her nursing credentials had expired 5 years earlier. And yet, she carried herself like a medical professional on duty. That's what caught my eye the most, the bag. It wasn't a purse. It was a medical-grade storage satchel, the kind used for sample collection, portable diagnostics, and controlled substance transport. I knew it because I had seen the same kind in the hands of DEA field agents. She'd visit older residents, Mrs. Green, Mr. Vaughn, the McKinley's, people I knew to be on multiple prescriptions. Every time she left, the bag was a little more full, and the residents were a little more relieved. Sharon's just helping me organize my medications, Mrs. Green told Emily Smith, the young schoolteacher next door. She knows which ones I don't need anymore, says I'm on too many. That was the moment everything clicked. Sharon wasn't just helping people, she was curating, filtering their medications, removing what she called expired or duplicate prescriptions, and in return offering generic alternatives that just so happened to arrive in little plastic baggies with no labels. Her pitch was brilliant. "You're overpaying for name brands," she would say. "I've got access to low-cost generics from an independent supplier. FDA approved, same ingredients. You'll save hundreds." And they believed her. Because Sharon had three things every con artist dreams of: trust, authority, and a damn good poker face. But what she didn't have was someone watching her, not until now. I began building the case piece by piece. Each visit logged, each neighbor's condition tracked, each medication swap noted. And that's when I saw it, the first real sign of criminal intent. It was a Tuesday morning when Sharon walked into Mrs. McKinley's home with her signature bag. I watched through my scope as she pulled out a small brown bottle, shook her head in theatrical disappointment, and dropped it into a separate Ziploc. She then opened her own container and poured out identical-looking capsules into the original bottle. Same color, same size, different pills. I knew the substitution trick. It's common in low-level street scams. Take legit meds from victim A, replace them with over-the-counter supplements or vitamins, and sell the real stuff to victim B at a discount. Rinse. Repeat. Except Sharon was doing it in golf course communities. When I zoomed in later on the bottle she left behind thanks to a camera hidden in a wind chime outside Mrs. McKinley's porch, I caught a partial label. The original was a blood pressure medication worth about $150 for a 30-day supply. But the capsules inside? Calcium supplements bulk ordered online for $5 a bottle. It wasn't just a con anymore. It was medical fraud. Dangerous, calculated, and effective. And worst of all, no one suspected a thing. The next day, I spotted Sharon having coffee with Mr. Vaughn, an elderly veteran on 5 prescriptions. She smiled, laughed, touched his hand with practiced warmth. I couldn't hear the conversation, but the body language was crystal clear. She was grooming her next donor, and he was thanking her. I filed an encrypted report that night. Subject: Sharon Whitmore, aka primary suspect. Allegation: illegal diversion of prescription medications. Modus operandi: home visits, medication review, unauthorized substitutions. Victim count: estimated 10 residents. Projected profit: otok 10K per month. It was all coming together. But there was a problem. Sharon had started watching me too. I caught her standing at her upstairs window, watching my front porch through binoculars. Her smile was thin, calculated, cold. We had both seen the other's real face. The game was on. It started with a letter, typed, folded, and hand-delivered in a sealed envelope. HOA letterhead at the top. Neighbors' names listed below. A bolded subject line: community safety meeting, mandatory attendance requested. Date: Saturday, 7 p.m. Location: Willow Creek Hills Community Center. Purpose: resident concerns regarding Mr. Ryan Carter. Unit 46. I stared at the paper for a full minute. Sharon Whitmore wasn't just harassing me anymore. She was taking it public. This wasn't a meeting, it was a damn trial. She had realized the citations weren't pushing me out fast enough. I wasn't breaking. I wasn't folding. I wasn't packing up my computer gear and disappearing like the others who challenged her control. So now, she was escalating, flipping the narrative. And if she had it her way, I'd walk out of that meeting branded as a threat, shunned by every neighbor in a 5-mile radius. But she had no idea how much that would cost her. The Willow Creek Hills Community Center looked like a high school auditorium that had lost its soul. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, foldable chairs set in perfect rows. At 6:59 p.m., every seat was filled. Roughly 45 residents, mostly retirees, sat quietly, faces pinched with concern or blank with curiosity. I took a seat in the back. My heart was steady, but my senses were razor sharp. Sharon stood at the front like she was about to deliver a eulogy. Navy blazer, pearl earrings, her HOA name tag gleaming under the lights. "Thank you all for coming," she began, voice crisp and deliberate. "Tonight's meeting concerns a matter of growing urgency in our community. I ask that we remain civil, respectful, and focused on facts." I watched her place a poster board onto an easel. Pinned across it were photos, grainy, telephoto shots of my computer set up through the window, zoom-ins of my trash bin, my parked car, even screenshots of my Amazon packages. She pointed to each one like presenting evidence in a court of law. "This is Unit 46, she said, "the residence of Mr. Ryan Carter. Since moving in, we've recorded multiple violations. Grass height exceeding regulations, trash visibility, suspicious late-night activity, and perhaps most concerning, a sealed criminal record obtained through background checks." There it was. She'd gone nuclear. The room stirred. Murmurs spread like a ripple. I caught Mrs. Green frowning. Mr. Vaughn leaned over and whispered something to his wife. Sharon turned the page of her notes and added, "While we respect the legal privacy of sealed records, the presence of a former offender with erratic behavior, unusual surveillance equipment, and no verifiable employment poses a serious concern to our elderly residents." I stood slowly. "May I respond?" She hesitated. She wasn't expecting that. Then nodded, tight-lipped. I walked to the front of the room, all eyes on me. "My name is Ryan Carter," I began, "and I live in Unit 46. What you've heard tonight is technically correct, but dangerously incomplete." A pause. "Yes, I have a sealed juvenile record. I made a mistake when I was 19. It was non-violent. It was resolved. I paid the price, and I moved forward, just like anyone else should be allowed to." More murmurs. One man nodded slowly. "And yes, I work odd hours," I added, "because I'm a freelance IT consultant. I take contracts across time zones. Sometimes that means all-nighters. Sometimes that means days of quiet coding with 3 monitors and a bad haircut. But none of that makes me a threat. I scanned the room, measured their reactions, and then I delivered the real shot. What should concern you more is what's not being said here tonight." Sharon stiffened behind me. I turned toward her, then back to the residents. "Mrs. Whitmore has conducted an aggressive campaign of citations, fines, and surveillance. Not just against me, but several others in this room. Ask Mr. Foster fined $700 for a crack in his sidewalk. Ask Emily Smith, cited twice for wind chimes. Emily, sitting near the aisle, raised her hand. She made me remove them. Said they disrupted neighborhood acoustics. The room chuckled, but tension still hung in the air. And ask yourselves, I continued, why someone would go to such extremes to silence one neighbor who's done nothing illegal. I didn't accuse. I didn't expose her crimes, not yet. That would come later. But I could see her mask beginning to crack. Then it happened. Mrs. Rodriguez, frail and soft-spoken, stood up. Sharon's helped me a lot, she said. She organizes my medications, finds cheaper alternatives, even got me insulin for half the price last month. That was the slip. Emily turned toward her. Wait, I thought she just helped organize the pills? She does, Mrs. Rodriguez stammered. But sometimes she brings extras. Said she knows a discount supplier. Generic stuff. All heads turned to Sharon. She stepped forward. I help seniors avoid pharmaceutical overcharges, she said quickly. It's not illegal to provide alternatives. These are vitamins, supplements, nothing dangerous. But her voice was tight, her breathing shallow. Jenny Myers stood up, the registered nurse from Unit 14. Calm. Professional. Actually, she said, recommending or substituting prescription medication without a license is illegal, even for a former nurse, especially if you're distributing them. The room went silent. For the first time, Sharon looked uncertain. Her lips moved, but no words came out. The community was beginning to see the real battle. Not HOA rules versus neighborhood harmony, but truth versus control. And Sharon's grip was slipping. As people began murmuring again, I stepped back, not as the man on trial, but as the man who had just watched the crowd start to question their judge. The week after the community meeting was eerily calm. No new fines showed up in my mailbox. Sharon didn't glare from her window. The HOA newsletter even arrived without a passive-aggressive note about yard decor. For the first time since I moved into Willow Creek Hills, everything seemed quiet. And that's exactly what terrified me. When predators go silent, they're not retreating. They're repositioning. The invitation arrived 3 days later. Another envelope, this one cream-colored, sealed with gold foil. Willow Creek Hills, monthly potluck gathering, hosted by HOA President Sharon Whitmore, Saturday, 6 p.m., Community Center lawn, theme, summer flavors. Bring your appetite. And scribbled in blue ink at the bottom, in perfectly round handwriting, Ryan, hope you'll come. I made something special. S. I held the invitation for a long time. Sharon Whitmore had just tried to annihilate my reputation at a public meeting and failed. Her accusations had backfired. Her medical practices were being questioned. Even her loyal supporters were starting to ask the right questions. So now, she wanted to share a meal? Not a chance. But I would show up. Not to eat, to observe. Because this potluck wasn't about summer flavors. It was about final moves. Saturday evening, 5:55 p.m. The lawn behind the community center was dressed like a backyard wedding. Folding tables, checkered cloths, mason jar lanterns strung between trees. Dozens of residents mingled around Tupperware trays and plastic serving spoons, exchanging casserole secrets and Jell-O nostalgia. Sharon stood at the center table, radiant in a sunflower yellow dress, her hair pinned back, wearing the most genuine smile I'd ever seen. It was chilling. Ryan, she called when she saw me. I'm so glad you came. Her voice was sugar. Her eyes were knives. I nodded politely. Wouldn't miss it. I made my famous summer pasta salad, she said, motioning to a large porcelain bowl at the center of the table. Family recipe. I set aside a special plate for you. Of course she did. The plate was already prepared, resting near the end of the table, covered with foil, labeled in perfect cursive, Ryan, no tomatoes. She remembered I didn't like tomatoes. But she also knew something else, something she wasn't supposed to. My shellfish allergy. Severe. Documented. One accidental exposure could shut down my airway in minutes. She had accessed my rental records somehow, maybe hacked my insurance app, maybe bribed someone at the HOA office. Either way, she knew. And now she was smiling, like she couldn't wait to watch me take the first bite. I accepted the plate with a nod and moved to the shaded bench beneath a ficus tree. Saturday with the others, laughed at stories, sipped water. But the food? I didn't touch a single bite. Instead, I waited for her eyes to wander, then carefully peeled back the foil, transferring portions to napkins in my lap. I crumbled the pasta into my empty water cup, folded napkins around the rest, and stuffed it all into my bag. Years of undercover paranoia and a gut instinct honed by danger were the only reasons I was still breathing. Because 15 minutes later, Sharon approached. "Enjoying the salad?" she asked sweetly. I smiled. "Delicious." She tilted her head. "You barely ate." Trying to pace myself, I lied. "You made enough for an army." She nodded, but something flickered in her eyes. Frustration, confusion. She checked her watch, then excused herself. She'd timed it. She'd calculated the exposure window. 10 to 20 minutes. Symptoms would begin with itching, facial flushing, tightening in the throat. By 30 minutes, I'd be unconscious, dead before the ambulance ever arrived. And she would have been the first to call 911, the first to offer CPR. The heroine in a tragedy she scripted. I left early, said I was tired. Sharon didn't protest. But her eyes followed me to the sidewalk. Back home, I opened my emergency med kit. Inside one of the napkins, I found a faint shimmer, a speck of translucent shell, crushed but distinct. I ran a portable allergy strip across the pasta. It turned blood red. Shellfish proteins. Positiva. This wasn't cross-contamination. This was targeted, deliberate, premeditated. I sat in the dark for a long time, staring at the test result. Then I picked up the phone. "Sarah," I said when my handler answered. "We need to escalate. Sharon just tried to kill me." There was a pause on the line. "You're sure?" She cooked a separate plate, with a known allergen, concentrated, hidden, and timed. Another pause. Then steel. "Understood. You're authorized to act. Get the evidence. Secure the scene." The next morning, I returned to the community center. Sharon was already there, tidying up leftovers, stacking tables. She looked up when she saw me surprised, then quickly composed. "Feeling better?" she asked. All concern. "Much better," I said. "Appetite's still off, though." She smiled, but her fingers gripped the plastic wrap on the salad bowl just a little too tight. I watched her walk to the dumpster and toss the entire container inside. She even wiped the edges clean with bleach spray. Efficient. Clinical. Like a nurse sanitizing a scene. Our eyes met through the window. She knew. I knew. And now the clock was ticking. Because I wasn't just a nuisance anymore. I was a threat she hadn't eliminated. Yet, the silence between us didn't last long. 3 days after the potluck, Sharon made her move. It started with another letter, slipped under my door in the middle of the night. No HOA letterhead this time, just a single sheet of paper with a typed message. "You don't belong here. Some of us protect this community, others threaten it. Leave now or your past will catch up with you." No signature. But I knew the author. The next morning, she played her ace. 911 anonymous tip. The dispatcher's notes later read, "Suspicious male in Unit 46. Unemployed. Erratic behavior. Possible surveillance equipment aimed at elderly homes. Known criminal background." I watched the patrol car pull up from my front window. 2 officers stepped out, Rodriguez and Davis, both from the county sheriff's department. Standard uniforms, standard postures, but their faces shifted when they saw me. Neutral professionalism. Mild curiosity. No sense of urgency. Sharon watched from across the street, her expression masked behind her garden shears. She thought this was it. The knockout punch. Her goal was simple. Get me arrested. Leverage the sealed record she'd uncovered. Paint me as a voyeur, a fraud, a danger to seniors. If she couldn't kill me quietly, she'd destroy me publicly with handcuffs and headlines. She underestimated everything. I opened the door with a calm smile. "Officers, good morning." Rodriguez cleared his throat. "Sir, we received a complaint from your HOA president. Mind if we ask a few questions?" "Not at all. Please come in." I led them into the living room, where 3 monitors were glowing softly in the dim light. No illegal surveillance, no hidden cameras showing bedroom windows or private bathrooms, just open-source software, network maps, and a browser tab logged into a public pharmaceutical pricing database. I gestured casually. "I'm a freelance IT consultant. I do contract work for healthcare startups. Data security mostly." Davis leaned in toward one of the screens. "Looks like pharmacy systems. Comparative drug pricing. I help clients identify pricing inconsistencies." I let that sink in. Rodriguez nodded slowly. "Your neighbor mentioned unusual behavior. Mind if we see some ID?" "Of course." I handed over my California license under my cover name, Ryan Carter. It scanned clean. But what Sharon didn't know was that the real alert wasn't on the surface. It was buried in a federal backend accessible only to verified law enforcement. Rodriguez walked outside to run the license through dispatch. I watched Davis scan the room. Calm, neutral, curious. Then Rodriguez returned. His entire demeanor changed. Eyes sharper, voice lower. "Sir, are you currently working with Detective Sarah Kim?" I didn't answer right away. Rodriguez nodded. "She asked to speak with us directly. We'll need a moment." They stepped outside. The moment their radios crackled, I saw Sharon glance out from her window, waiting, expecting a takedown. Instead, she watched the officers speak quietly, glance back at me, and then one by one nod. Rodriguez walked back in. His tone respectful now. "Mr. Carter, or rather, Detective Cole, we apologize for the intrusion. We've been briefed. You're clear." Davis added, "We're going to file the complaint as a civil dispute. No further action." He smiled. "Appreciate it." As they left, Rodriguez lowered his voice. "She's made 5 complaints in 6 months, always against younger residents. Always ends in fines or threats. Seems like this one's different." "It is," I said. "This one's federal." When their cruiser pulled away without handcuffs or confrontation, Sharon stepped outside, pretending to water the lawn. Her grip on the hose trembled slightly. She'd realized her mistake. She hadn't called the police on a criminal. She'd called the police on a cop. And now the roles had reversed. The predator had just triggered her own trap. That night, the FBI's facial recognition system pinged a match. My latest report, including Sharon's photo, evidence of the attempted poisoning, and her medical service to residents, had been escalated through official channels. It triggered an automatic database check. And someone somewhere, sitting behind a dark screen in a federal building, leaned forward. Match. 87% confidence. Name, Deborah Langston. Alias, Sharon Whitmore. Status, wanted. Charges, medical fraud, prescription theft. 3 counts of negligent homicide. 1 count of attempted murder of a federal agent. Deborah Langston had disappeared from New Mexico 3 years ago after a DEA task force closed in on her pill-swapping operation that left 3 seniors dead. She'd fled before indictment, changed her name, moved states, became Sharon Whitmore, the charming, tight-lipped HOA president of a retirement community in California, until she made one mistake too many, until she tried to poison a man with a sealed juvenile record who just happened to be federal law enforcement. And now the badge was coming for her. At 2:43 a.m., Sharon's phone lit up with an unknown number. She answered it anyway, a voice she hadn't heard in years. "You called the cops on an undercover?" Silence. "Jesus, Deb, you're done. They'll open the case from Albuquerque. The dead seniors, the pills, the fake scripts, all of it." "I had no choice," she whispered. "You always have a choice, and you chose the worst one." She ended the call, pacing, sweating. Then she began to shred documents. By morning, the wheels were in motion. The U.S. Marshals had been notified. Federal warrants reactivated. Interagency task force formed. By trying to expose me, Sharon had exposed herself. And now, the hunt was on. Her name was Deborah Langston. That was the first thing that popped on the alert. Not Sharon Whitmore. not HOA president, not concerned former nurse. Number the woman who had tried to poison me with pasta salad and citations was a fugitive. A ghost with a federal warrant on her name and blood on her hands. The match wasn't instant. It took a high-confidence facial recognition hit from the FBI's fugitive database. Cross-referenced with old nursing licenses, DMV photos, arrest records, and surveillance images I'd submitted just days earlier. Deborah Langston, wanted for prescription drug theft and trafficking, practicing medicine without a license, 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter, attempted murder of a DEA field agent, flight to avoid prosecution. The photos from New Mexico told the story. Same bone structure, same sharp chin, same cold, calculating eyes, just younger. Before the wrinkle lines, the suburban haircut, and the pearl earrings. Before Willow Creek Hills. She had vanished after a 2019 federal investigation into elder abuse and prescription pill manipulation at a retirement facility outside Albuquerque. 3 residents died after receiving counterfeit medication, all cases traced back to her helpful organizing visits. 1 DEA agent was hospitalized after ingesting a substituted blood pressure pill planted in his hotel coffee. Deborah disappeared 2 days before her scheduled arrest. Until now, she had rebuilt herself new name, new license, a made-up backstory about retiring from nursing for personal reasons. She slid into HOA leadership under the guise of community service, hiding in plain sight behind flower beds, grass vines, and homeowner rule number 17B. And she would have stayed hidden if she hadn't made 2 fatal mistakes. First, trying to poison me. Second, calling the cops. By the following morning, the situation had escalated into a full federal operation. Operation Garden Mask, a joint task force between the FBI, Delaware A, U.S. Marshals, and local law enforcement. I received a secure call from Special Agent Jennifer Hayes Lead on Langston's original case. "You've just uncovered one of our ghosts," she said. "We've been chasing this woman for nearly 3 years. We lost her after she ditched her vehicle in Nevada." "She's not just hiding," I replied. "She's working. She's perfected her system." "I saw your files," Hayes said. 15 elderly residents compromised, over $120,000 in diverted meds, dozens of fake generics. This is bigger than New Mexico. "She's dangerous," I said, "and she knows I'm on to her." There was a pause. "Then we have to move fast, before she disappears again." But Sharon, no, Deborah wasn't waiting for us to come knocking. By the time I walked past her house the next morning, the curtains were drawn. Her car was gone. The flowers on her porch had wilted. And something told me the grass wasn't going to get cut anytime soon. She'd sensed the heat. She always did. Inside her house, federal agents later found evidence of a hasty escape. Her laptop, factory reset, a stash of $18,000 in small bills, hidden inside her attic insulation, shredded HOA documents, many referencing medical support visits, 2 burner phones, 1 fake Arizona driver's license under the name Christine Morgan. But the most chilling find came from her garage. A medical cooler labeled RX, emergency only, containing sealed bags of insulin, heart medication, and fentanyl patches, all traced to neighbors from Willow Creek Hills. She had been preparing for her next move, maybe even her next town. The same cycle. Different state, same predator, new prey. By noon, Deborah's face was plastered on internal fugitive alerts. Her aliases listed. Her known tactics outlined. The woman who fined me for grass height was now America's most wanted in a pantsuit. Airports were notified. Highway patrol was on alert. Border crossings on watch. Her car, a white 2016 Toyota Camry, was spotted by a toll camera outside Bakersfield heading south. 2 hours later, a traffic cam caught it again near the outskirts of San Diego. I knew what she was doing. She was going for the border. Mexico was her exit plan. Always had been. The same way she vanished the first time, same fake documents, same cold logic. She'd traded one identity for another before, and she was betting she could do it again. But this time, she'd underestimated just how fast the federal government could move when one of their own was almost murdered. As night fell, Agent Hayes coordinated a multi-agency lockdown of all known routes south. Coast Guard patrols were deployed, border agents briefed, known smuggling routes flagged, And for the first time since her escape in 2019, Deborah Langston had nowhere left to run. I stayed up late, watching her house from across the street, lit only by the soft blue glow of the patrol cruiser idling nearby. Emily Smith walked over quietly, arms folded. "She's gone, isn't she?" She ran. "She tried to kill you." I nodded. "She's tried worse to others." Emily looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You should have never had to deal with this alone." "I didn't," I replied. "You spoke up. You cracked the mask." She smiled faintly. "But now what?" Now? Now we hunt her down. At 3:17 a.m., Agent Hayes called again. She ditched the Camry, switched vehicles, but we've got her on facial ID from a convenience store just north of the border. The clock's ticking. My fingers curled tightly around the edge of the counter as I listened. The endgame had begun. The predator had been exposed. The neighborhood queen had become the hunted fugitive. And the cop she tried to kill? He was going to be the one to bring her down. They caught her just past dawn. A worn black hoodie, jeans 2 sizes too big, and a fake ID in her shoe. Deborah Langston, a.k.a. Sharon Whitmore, was walking toward a private dock outside Chula Vista when a joint FBI-DEA tactical unit intercepted her. Quiet, clean, clinical. She didn't run. She didn't cry. She simply raised her hands and said, "It was supposed to work." I was on a video call with Agent Hayes 10 minutes later. She didn't resist, Hayes told me, flipping through a manila file. But she had a burner phone preloaded with encrypted contacts, routes, safe houses, offshore banking passwords. If we'd been 12 hours later, we'd be chasing her across the Gulf. Instead, she sat in federal custody, wrapped in orange, behind an inch-thick glass wall, awaiting trial on 5 federal charges, including attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. The pasta salad nearly cost me my life. Now, it would cost her the rest of hers. 2 weeks later, the HOA held another meeting. But this time, it wasn't chaired by Sharon. It was led by Emily Smith, the high school teacher who'd stood up for me that night in the community center. She'd been elected interim HOA president in a landslide vote after the truth about Sharon broke across every local news station in California. Serial pill thief exposed in retirement community. From nurse to predator, woman find cop before trying to kill him. Undercover officer survives HOA horror. I didn't attend the meeting in uniform, but I did stand near the back wall this time without fear, without the weight of secrecy, without having to hide my badge behind a fake name. Emily tapped the mic and cleared her throat. "Before we begin tonight," she said, her voice strong and clear, "there's someone here who deserves more than just thanks." The room turned toward me. Detective Ryan Cole risked his life to protect our community. He posed as one of us, not to spy, but to save. And because of him, a woman who stole from, lied to, and endangered our most vulnerable neighbors is going to prison. Applause erupted. Genuine, lasting. I wasn't undercover anymore. I was just Ryan now. The months that followed brought change to Willow Creek Hills. Real change. Sharon's house, once a fortress of cameras, clipped hedges, and lawn measuring tape, was repossessed by the government under asset forfeiture laws. Her silver Camry was sold at auction. Her remaining cash was used as restitution for the victims. But it wasn't just about punishment. It was about healing. Emily pushed through policy reform in the HOA charter. Maximum fine for lawn height reduced to $25. No resident could be fined without a 3-member review. All HOA leaders must pass federal background checks. Any person claiming medical authority must provide active credentials, and all HOA meetings were now publicly recorded and archived. Mr. Vaughn, who once blindly supported Sharon, now helped other seniors verify their prescriptions. Mrs. Rodriguez's diabetes improved drastically once her real insulin was restored. Jenny Myers, the actual nurse, began volunteering every Saturday to help residents manage their medications the legal and safe way. In that corner of the community where my grass once measured 2.1 inches, they turned it into a community garden in honor of the lives Sharon nearly cost and the cop who dug beneath the surface. A small wooden sign stood by the rosemary bush. Truth grows best when the weeds are pulled. The trial lasted less than 4 days. Deborah Langston pled guilty to avoid a life sentence. She received 35 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole for at least 28. She'll spend her remaining years behind steel doors, her stethoscope replaced with shackles, her clipboard with a case number. Her victims, 15 of them from Willow Creek Hills alone, were compensated through a combination of federal restitution and HOA insurance settlements. The number, $312,000 in total, covering medication costs, hospitalizations, therapy, and emotional trauma. I was formally commended by the department and promoted to detective sergeant, specializing in elder fraud and pharmaceutical crimes. Funny, really. A sealed juvenile drug record had once kept me from renting an apartment. Now, it had helped me stop a serial poisoner who hid behind neighborhood charm. I stayed in Willow Creek Hills for a few more weeks, just to see the neighborhood breathe again. Mrs. Green invited me to tea. Mike Foster asked for help setting up his home security system. And one evening, as the sun dipped behind the tall oaks lining the sidewalk, Emily handed me a new letter, this time not sealed in threat, but warmth. It was an invitation. Retirement community in Phoenix needs oversight. OA president suspected of insurance fraud. We need someone with experience and a little grass-stained revenge in their soul. I smiled. I suppose I have a reputation now. Emily laughed. You're the lawn guy. The HOA whisperer. The cop who wouldn't die over pasta. I folded the letter and pocketed it. Before I left, I trimmed my grass one last time down to exactly 1.5 inches. Old habit. Then I walked across the street and placed something small on the garden sign. A ruler. Broken in half. Because sometimes the justice system needs more than evidence and procedure. Sometimes it needs a cop with a past, a neighborhood on edge, and a $5,000 grass fine that turns into the crack where truth grows through the concrete. 6 months later, the grass in Willow Creek Hills grew just a little taller than regulation, and no one said a word. The rulers were gone. The citations stopped. And so did the fear. Sharon's shadow no longer hovered over porch lights or through closed curtains. The neighborhood had changed not just in policy, but in spirit. It breathed differently. The whispers were replaced by real conversations. Neighbors who once nodded and walked away now stayed to ask how your day was going. The fences didn't feel like walls anymore. They felt like boundaries people respected, not rules they feared. Emily Smith was officially elected HOA president in a unanimous vote. No one even ran against her. Her first act? She passed the Transparency and Compassion Act, a local charter clause that required the HOA to hold monthly open forums, limit punitive fines, and offer support services to elderly residents struggling with medication or mobility. Instead of punishing people, the neighborhood now protected them. The victims, once passive and ashamed, found their voices. Mrs. Rodriguez, once Sharon's most loyal supporter, joined a statewide advocacy group for elder pharmaceutical safety. I believe she was helping me, she admitted during a press interview. But what I needed wasn't cheaper pills. I needed someone to explain, to care without taking. Mr. Vaughn and his wife started hosting monthly coffee circles. No politics, no rules, just connection. Jenny Myers, the nurse, became a certified medication consultant. Her number was now on every fridge in the neighborhood, not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. And Sharon Whitmore, or rather, Deborah Langston, she disappeared into the federal system. Her name became a case study. Her face, a warning in training briefings across the country. This is what it looks like when trust is weaponized. Her victims will carry the scars, some physical, some emotional, but they're no longer carrying them alone. As for me, I left Willow Creek Hills 2 weeks after Deborah's sentencing. There was no farewell party, no badge ceremony, just a quiet Sunday morning where Emily handed me a thermos of black coffee and said, "You're always welcome here, detective. Just maybe trim your lawn once in a while." We laughed, and then I left. Because justice, as heavy as it can be, sometimes needs to make room for healing. And healing only happens when you stop chasing ghosts and start building something worth staying for. Some people say neighborhoods are just clusters of houses with fences in between. But I learned something different in Willow Creek Hills. A neighborhood is what happens when people stop being afraid of one another. It's not about lawn height or mailbox color. It's about who checks in when your porch light hasn't turned on. Who notices when your medication seems off? Who stands up when something feels wrong, even when it's uncomfortable? That's community. That's what Sharon tried to poison. And that's what we rebuilt anyway. At its surface, This is a story about a grass fine, a neighborhood feud, and a cop who refused to back down. But beneath the drama and deception lies a deeper truth, one about power, trust, and the invisible lines between safety and control. Sharon Whitmore wasn't just a villain because she stole pills or poisoned a cop. She became dangerous the moment she used her position of trust to manipulate others. Her authority came not from violence, but from quiet influence, a smile, a clipboard, a soft word about helping her neighbors. And that's what made her so effective, so invisible, so believable. The most terrifying predators don't always wear masks. Sometimes they look like your HOA president, your caretaker, your friend. Detective Ryan Cole, with a sealed juvenile record and a borrowed identity, represents the opposite side of that coin, someone judged too quickly, dismissed too easily, and underestimated repeatedly. But it was exactly that flawed image that allowed him to see what others could not. His presence, unassuming and quiet, cracked a system built on appearance and compliance. His story reminds us that a criminal past doesn't always mean a criminal heart, just as a clean image doesn't guarantee clean intentions. The true heart of this story beats within the community, the seniors who trusted the wrong person, the neighbors who found their voice, the woman who stood up in a crowded room to say, "This isn't right." When systems of power fail, it is individual courage, empathy, and vigilance that hold the line. This wasn't just about catching a criminal, it was about taking back a neighborhood. So what do we learn from Willow Creek Hills? We learn that community isn't built through fear, but through understanding. That rules mean nothing if they serve control over compassion. That trust must be earned and questioned, especially when it comes wrapped in charm. That silence can be a weapon just as much as deceit. And most of all, we learn that the fight for justice rarely happens in a courtroom. Sometimes it happens in your driveway, at a potluck, in a folding chair at a community meeting. This story is a reminder that doing the right thing might not always feel heroic, but it is always necessary, especially when no one else wants to say the hard thing out loud. Because the moment you allow someone like Sharon to decide what belongs and what doesn't, the moment we ignore the fine print on justice, that's when evil blooms in plain sight. Even in the middle of a perfect lawn,